race relationship with blacks and whites, and even with the Chinese community, were pretty much settled until around 1954 to 1955. That's when the schools were integrated. I noticed the students' body kind of stay separate. The blacks stayed together, the whites stayed together, and then there's us, the minority. And I haven't really witnessed any clashes between the blacks and the whites, but I first felt discrimination from both in various ways. That's why, for me, I try to be like the ambassador of my ethnic group, being a Chinese, by doing well in sports. That gains the respect from both sides.
Well, Chinatown, D.C. back then was by itself, but surrounding the Chinese community were black neighborhoods. So we were within community, within a black neighborhood. Race relationships when I was growing up, basically were two categories. You were either white or non-whites. So that's why when we grew up, we were mostly had black friends. So it was sort of like a snobby white or a friendly black school. So most of my friends were black then.
Growing up in the 60s, I think the black population, the African American population, kind of aligned with the Chinese Americans because, you know, they didn't feel a hatred towards the Chinatown area or the Chinatown community. And in fact, the non-Chinese that lived in the area, we always had a pretty good working, close relationship with the other kids that were non-Chinese.
In the late 60s, when I used to take the bus to school, people who didn't harass us before, all of a sudden you'd walk through the street, there would be racial slurs. There would be pushing and shoving and people kind of trying to, I guess, get a rise out of you. And then by the time I went into high school, there was more anger. There was a lot of racial tension. The black people on the street were angry and they would pinch at me or shove me, and they would call me racial slurs like chink and things like that. It was a little scary because the atmosphere changed. Then all of a sudden, it seemed like everybody was angry at everybody else, and it was all about race then.
I remember as a little girl growing up in a quiet area, North Capitol Street, even though it was a main thoroughfare, I played with some of the people from the neighborhood, African American kids. I went to school, eventually we went to school around the corner from where we lived. I played with the kids there, I went to school there. I remember some degree of discrimination. I remember that when we were new to the school that there was some teasing, but we had to do our best to fit in. We are minorities within a minority group, and my father told us that it was important to fit in, to not cause any problems, and do your best. It was not easy. Being Chinese American in that area among mainly African Americans was kind of frustrating at times because we weren't sure how to act. My parents wanted us to stay very Chinese, be a good little Chinese girl, but if you're gonna survive in a predominantly African American neighborhood in the city, you have to have some degree of assertiveness. And I had to learn how to fight because at times some of the kids would physically want to push and pull and fight with you. So I had to learn to survive. It was not easy because I was a shy kid, but when pushed to the end, I remember getting into a couple of fights. But because they pushed me to the end, I won. I had to establish myself that I was not a pushover. After that, it was okay.
We went to school with a lot of blacks, and we've never really had problems. We played basketball with them, we played football with them. Very rarely did any of us ever have any racial problems. In fact, I don't really remember any racial problems. I don't know, these things just didn't affect me. I mean, I was just too busy having fun. I knew that there was always tension between blacks and whites. And I always felt like we were in the middle and we kind of rode the fence. You know, we could go either way. I had black friends and I had white friends, and I always felt like we were kind of accepted by both sides. I never really felt I had a problem, personally anyway.